May 10th, and we're trying to sneak the last couple of days in here on our spring season. It's starting to get hot, so the river's starting to come up, but it's an absolute primo shape today, which is nice. Everything here has to do with freezing level. So this is just, we're starting to move into freshet right now, and this river is going to be on a continual rise, especially as it gets hotter. This river is going to start bumping up, and eventually it's going to go out. But today we got 4 or 5 feet of clarity, river's up, there's no one around, and it's sweet. It feels like summer out here. Last guide vlog in here for the spring season, and enjoy ourselves and do some fishing, do some trouting, see if we can find a fish or two today. And yeah, come along for a ride. Here we go. Screw around here with a bunch of different stuff. We got spay rods, we got swing rods, we got Euro nymphing rods. we got all kind of junk in there just for fun. So I don't know, we'll throw it all today and see what happens.
Black and blue with the orange thread hanging off the back.
You go first, buddy.
You gonna split it up or what?
No, you go first. So this is where it happens. We actually get a winter steelhead take on the drone. Super crazy. Big cartwheel right there. Thing comes off on the cartwheel, pan back up river. Everyone's so excited. Patty's like, oh no, gone. Can't believe it. And we'll run it back here and we'll go through it and I'll show you how long it takes for this thing actually to climb on. So he's just punched out a cast, throwing the mend in there. It's starting to swing around. We're just sitting here chatting. Right about here, he's like, oh, I'm starting to get a little bit of a pluck. He switches over his hand into his left inside hand, plucking, plucking, plucking. I'm like, are you seriously, you getting a bite here? And boom, there you go. Hooked up, fish is on there. So took a little bit of time, cartwheel, and gone.
And he had it, but it was really light take, right?
Fuck, it was a nice cartwheel.
Did you fucking, I only saw like this much of it. Like, oh yeah. I mean, that's all I needed to see.
Oh, buddy.
Sorry. Don't go too far out there. Those big guys will eat you. Hog snatching.
We're gonna get some some late season steelhead tips from Patty B here. He's gonna break it down, tell you what to do.
Let me get my blue can in me first. Late season steelhead tips. Well, by now you should have done your homework and know where the nice structure is in the river. You know, these fish are moving. They only have one thing on their mind right now, and that's to get some eggs in the gravel or to help those eggs out. These fish are moving, so you want to fish those, you know, faster areas that they're going to have to slow down and park in for a moment. And same thing, like big wiggly flies get their attention, but you don't got to go deep for them or anything like that. These things are going to move to the fly.
Good tips, Patty.
Yeah, good tips.
Good fucking tips, buddy.
Well, let's talk about this then.
All right.
You know, you're out there hanging on for that big freight train grab, but more what I've seen is the odd, like, little subtle bite, a gentle pluck, but it's a fish. That little tiny pluck happens like mid-swing or just outside of mid-swing. There's nothing else it's gonna be. First of all, don't flinch when you feel the first one, and hopefully that fish comes back and commits. But what I've noticed with some of them, they just don't. But the thing is, you found that fish, right? So don't give up on that thing. So what I typically have been doing, I throw a shot right across the bow again, right back at them, and see what they're really made of. Then what I do is I typically switch the fly. I just go 180 degrees. So say I was using a blue fly with blue flashy stuff, then I go with a pink fly with pink flashy stuff, and then bring that fly through again. And when I came through an hour later, that fish absolutely annihilated me. The big lesson in that is to take those subtle bites and try your best with them, but then don't give up on those fish, right? It's not always gonna be just wham bam, here you go, you got a fish to hand. You put a lot of time to finding these things, so stick with them if you have the ability to. Like at the end of the day, you gotta ask yourself, did I fish enough good holding lies, right? And if you kind of move each cast through good areas, you're gonna get what was meant to be got. And again, you get them or you don't. You don't want to do little steps and make 2 casts basically in the same spot. Because if you think about, if it's a game of numbers, at the end of the day, if you're trying to cover available lies, right? When you might be on a drift like we're doing today, looking for potentially 3 fish, maybe 4 fish. Take a step the size of a good fish, which is, let's call it 30 inches. So you're taking a solid 2 step.
There is no secret spot. There is no secret fly. There's no secret, sink tip that's gonna get them. It's just a matter of covering as much water as possible, and that's really why we wear a pair of wading boots out every year. The amount of miles that we put on out here is pretty crazy. There's a ton of water to fish, and there's a lot of places they could be. There's a lot of places they definitely aren't. And that just sort of comes with experience. So if you're looking at these rivers sort of for a first time, you're probably not going to figure it out on your first, second, third, 10th time. We don't have any secrets out here with what we're doing. We're just putting the miles in, covering as much water as possible. You kind of get to this point in the season, you wish it would last a little bit longer, but then you start figuring out exactly where these fish are. And for the most part, the majority of the fish that we've seen this year, and it hasn't been a super strong run of fish, but the majority of the fish that we have seen this year have all come out of the same 40 feet of water on the same swings. Would you agree with that?
Like some of the pieces of water that we've seen patterns emerge where the fish are using it consistently, there's very solid holding water with, that, again, 2 to 4 feet of depth with moderate flow throughout a run. But like secondary to that, there's like kind of big structure in it, bigger holding rocks where the cobble's mixed, right? Anywhere from like, grapefruit size right up to microwave sized rocks. Down below these areas and above these areas, you've got very big pushes of gradient that the fish have to swim through. You can kind of see how the puzzle fits together, certainly after you get a few bites in there, but you should be able to guess it, if you're spending time there when the water's a little bit lower, where these spots are gonna be. The river does hold some of the little secrets visually. If you look at structure and bottom contours, and then of course gradient and current speed, it's gonna kind of point you in the right direction. There's always subtle little tiny spots that are in play at differing water heights that aren't necessarily really obvious, and you need to explore those too, because that's how you can turn maybe a 1 fish day, which is great, into a fantastic steelheading day where you might find 2 or 3 fish if there's a good push coming through. Remember, these things are only this big, so even an area that's
getting big ones.
That's even this big. And then an area that's even 20 feet out or 30 feet out on a cast, quite a short cast, and only maybe 15 or 20 feet long, can definitely hold a fish like this, right? That's all they need, as long as the requirements are there with the structure and the current, and of course, it depends as well, what they've had to come up through. Don't always look for the big classic run, especially when the river's busy and there's people in those classic runs all day long.
Yeah.
Go find little micro buckets.
I like that, micro buckets. This will probably be one of the last days we're gonna fish out here this year. We got a stretch of heat coming up here, which is probably gonna put the river out for good, but it's been a good year, COVID and all. Thanks for everyone that supported us this spring. We had a lot of local support. We'll be back next year. Hopefully the next thing that happens is we get Langara Island opens and we'll be up there, but it all sort of depends on what happens with
provincial regulations. So that's it. That's all. Sweet year. Thanks everybody. Cheers.